Thank you very much. Clapping at the start. Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name's Aaron Duggan and I am the Head of Crime at Cheshire Police. What I'm proposing to do is I'll talk through some of our challenges that we've got. And as most of these talks, the way they go, there's always a technical issue. So my tablet's just locked as I've stepped up. Do a bit of myth busting as well if we can. And there's 4 people barred from answering these questions. Brian, you're barred, Kathy, you're barred, and 2 colleagues from Stabbury as well. So what percentage of all crime now do you think is online? I can play you warmer, hotter or colder if that helps. 40%. 40%. Anybody want to go higher or lower than that? 60. Higher or lower than that? 75. It's lower than 60. You're not far off. 48%. So all crime now that is currently recorded by UK policing, nearly half of it has got an online footprint. So that's the scale of the sort of challenges that we have. About 2 million crimes are fraud every single year. Now, if you equate that to the virtual world and the physical world, it's like somebody walking down your door and knocking on the door. Right, that's what happens when you get an email, isn't it? Where you're not familiar with it. So a lot of the crime that is reported are attempts. Now, I talk about, sorry, I should have given you a little bit about my background, really. I don't really know a great deal about computing, and the irony isn't lost on me when I was given the challenge of being the North West Regional Organised Crime Threat Lead for Cybercrime in the North West. So I've been on a steep curve, really, my learning around what the internet's about, what our capabilities are, and I've introduced a model across the North West that allows the 6 forces to come together interoperably, virtually, and help each other. Because we know we can't work in isolation. We can't stand still, and we've got to keep evolving. So I've introduced what's called the 6 C's. So I'll talk a little bit about the complexity, talk about our capability, capacity, the challenge, consistency, and communication, because I think that's important. And what I've got here, it's only a 4-minute clip. Just bear with me, please, because for a lot of people in this room, there's a lot of expertise and experience. This might not be pitched at your level. But what this does is just reinforce what the actual challenge is, and this is what we're dealing with. So just have a quick watch of this, please.
We use technology every day in our lives for everything.
People just expect the lights to be on, they expect to be able to turn on the tap and for water to come out.
You're activating about 250 different microchips in the modern automobile. Every machine that you get connected to in the hospital, the banks, your credit card charges.
We're also seeing appliances that have become internet-enabled.
Technology is just becoming the fabric of the modern world.
We are becoming increasingly dependent on it.
People don't realize that behind all of these systems, there's computers that were probably built 20 years ago.
Surf's up, see you on the net.
All of those computers and software are deeply insecure. The standard view of a cybercriminal is some 16-year-old pimply kid in his mom's basement hacking away at the keyboard in between playing World of Warcraft or Call of Duty. But it's changed. Today, it's actually business, and it's run by traditional organized crime groups and new modern organizations. They are global, they're multinational, they're multilingual, and they're operating 24/7.
If you shopped at a Target store on Black Friday, your credit card may have been affected by a massive security breach.
If you are a victim of a car theft, you know that your car is stolen, you can call the police, they can look for it, etc. What's different about cybercrime is it happens in the background. And by the time you actually realize it, if you ever do, it's way too late.
You can see the hacker is actually working in my computer right now.
99% of the people who have been victims of cybercrime don't even know about it. Their machines have been hacked. The bad guys are living inside your computer. They're monitoring what you're doing. According to the latest studies in 2014, the average time to detection is over 200 days. And that doesn't matter if you're a mom sitting at home or the major corporation in Silicon Valley. 200 days across the board. By the time you realize you've got a problem, it's way too late. All of your customers' credit cards are now out on the internet, where people are starting to short your stock in really odd ways.
One hacker group may have stolen up to $1 billion from banks around the world. Kaspersky says the cyber attacks are still happening.
They're going to first break into a computer in Buenos Aires, and from there going to hop to a computer in Italy, and from Italy they'll go to London, and then they'll go to the bank that they want to take over in New York. And what that means is that now you have an international criminal investigation and the evidence is incredibly ephemeral. For some parts of the world, the whole concept of cyber and internet and computers is so new, they have absolutely no laws against cybercrime.
If we don't have a legal framework that allows the countries to cooperate, then the victim can't do much about the attacker. We don't have a set of frameworks that address the full range of cyber hazards.
The technology is developing way too quickly for us to rely on legal instruments to fix this problem. Beyond that, most of the world's information is not encrypted, whether it be your credit card number or your personal data or your health records.
Anthem Insurance got hit by a massive electronic attack. The hackers made off with many of the necessary tools to do a whole lot of damage to a lot of people.
We have the attackers run very, very quickly, and it's very difficult to defend against them.
The real challenge for all of us is really, do I feel safe in this online environment?
There's never been a better time for exponential change in the cybersecurity world.
I think that the next big technology should be the creation of a safer internet.
So just a short video there to reinforce what the challenge is. A couple of key things for me around what you've just seen over the brief 4 minutes there is it's a global problem. It's not unique to any particular country. They recognise no borders or boundaries whatsoever. The law has not kept pace with what we're dealing with. And if you look at the legislation, it's over 40 years old now. So in terms of potential consequences and punishment around law, there's very, very low risk and high gain for those that are committing the types of offences right now, certainly across the country. Now, we have got quite a mature, I think it's quite mature for law enforcement anyway, tasking process across the United Kingdom. You're all familiar with the National Cybersecurity Centre? Yes, no, yes? We can spend a bit of time on it if you're not. I'm getting more nods than not. So, well, they're responsible for protecting the national infrastructure. Okay, so what do you think the national infrastructure is? I know you've just had a bottle of beer and you've had some pizza, but come on. Railway network, yeah. Power, absolutely. Banks, absolutely. It's being attacked every single day. The national infrastructure and the National Cybersecurity Centre and GCHQ are defending the national infrastructure every single day. So who's attacking it? There's no trick questions when I'm trying to get a bit of audience participation, I promise you. Who's attacking it? Russia. State-sponsored is the political answer. State-sponsored cyber attacks on the national infrastructure. And our colleagues over here from Longarm and the first presentation that you saw will probably tell you what they're asked to do. Because we say, in law enforcement, the biggest vulnerability in terms of the gap around what we are capable of are small and medium-sized enterprises. Because they have very, very little by way of a response for when they become victims of cybercrime. So if you're internet facilitated and you rely very heavily on the web to conduct your business and you get an email on a Monday morning when you're open for business and says, we've stolen your information, we're going to take your website down, unless you pay us £500, what do you think is going to happen? They'll pay it. Of course they'll pay it. And they don't report it to us. They don't report it to the police. And then that person who's committed that crime will simply move on. So that is a challenge for us. So nationally, we have the National Cybersecurity Centre that task into the regional organised crime units, of which there are several across the country. Now, each regional organised crime unit has got a cybercrime team, and they're dedicated for the 4 types of cyber offences that we've got. Very helpfully, colleagues from Longarm there gave you 2 descriptions or definitions of about cybercrime. Nationally, we work to 4: cyber-dependent, cyber-enabled, internet-facilitated, and then anything else that's got a digital footprint. And it's been reinforced a few times with the other two guest speakers, but how many people in the room are online? It's probably easier to have the question who isn't online. And how many people have got a mobile phone? How many people have got more than one mobile phone? We can't exist without technology now, so you are all potentially victims. I don't want to sound alarmist when I say this, but you've got some challenges ahead when you look at how we communicate. You'll be walking through Chester with a mobile phone in your pocket. Some of you probably will know how it works, but your phone will be communicating with various bits of kit that are in street furniture, they're in shops, even your traditional old telephone mast. And when you make a phone call, you won't care how that phone call's been routed, you just want to make sure you speak to your friend. And every single time you try and communicate, you're leaving a footprint, and that's what's been explained before. So we look at our response. So regionally, the regional organised cybercrime units will deal with the cyber-dependent type of offences. For example, Warrington Borough Council's website was taken down for 3 days. Now, you might say, so what? Nobody died and nobody was at risk. But that local authority couldn't function online for the best part of a week. And that was a challenge for the local authority. Because if you think about it, online now, we have to interact with banks, we have to interact with paying bills, and if you can't do that online, it's very inconvenient for a lot of people. So in force now, I've gone from the national sort of to the region. I'm cantering through this because I've only got 20 minutes and I'm trying to make up a little bit of time. We're in our infancy now. We're setting up a cybercrime team. It's only 4 people to start with, but that's what it needs, this catalyst to kickstart our approach. In law enforcement, serious and organised crime is a problem, not just in the United Kingdom, but throughout Europe and the rest of the world. There's an awful lot of money in this. It's estimated that £37 billion in the UK alone is linked to serious and organised crime. And a vast percentage of that is online. We've had very, very tragic cases of sextortion, again, that's sort of been spoken about. And when you look at the vulnerability that sits behind that, if somebody's been foolish enough to expose themselves on a webcam and they are then blackmailed, because that's what it is, they either pay the money or they don't. The real tragedy behind it is that 7 people nationally have committed suicide because they've been exploited. Now, I'm not here to tell you sob stories, and I'll try and keep it light if I can, but what I'm saying to you is there's a lot of vulnerability behind cybercrime. And as interesting as it is as a topic, we've got to look at what is it we're trying to do, what is it we're trying to prevent. So nationally we have the 4 Ps approach. Anybody familiar with the 4 Ps here? You will if you're in policing. It's prevent, protect, prepare and pursue. It's dead simple. The police do a lot of pursuing, but we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem. You've probably heard that once or twice. We can't arrest everybody that's responsible for cybercrime. It's outside of our borders. We had a spike in Cheshire for online blackmail where the offenders were on the Ivory Coast. It's outside UK jurisdiction. So what do? What can we do? That's not defeatist. We get to the individuals that have reported the crime to us and we wrap around as much as we can to prevent them from being further victimised. And we will investigate it to the point where it's no longer, I don't think, viable in terms of a line of inquiry to take that any further. But what we shouldn't do is just ignore the threat. What we're trying to do is investigate them to a point there that should those offenders come into the United Kingdom at the point of entry, if we get our investigation right, they should be apprehended. That will send a really strong positive message for me. So sextortion's a problem. Romance fraud, again, it's been touched on briefly. That is a big problem in the United Kingdom because of our online footprint. And dating sites, they're exploited through false personas, false identities, and before you know it, the people are compromised and they're then blackmailed. And it is very tragic when you look at it. When you look at the web-based policing now, I think certainly the last 3 years, cybercrime has gone from what is a specialist area of policing to a mainstream area of policing. It's no longer viewed as a specialist area anymore. So we've embarked on, again nationally, mainstream cybercrime training. And we're always playing catch-up. We're always playing catch-up with technology, with the software, with the hardware. And when we respond to calls for service, or when a member of the public has rang up and said, I think I have been the victim of a cybercrime, what are we equipping our staff with? If we don't give them the right tools, don't give them the right training, don't give them the right mindset, we are failing people. I've already told you, almost half of all crime now is online. It's incumbent on us as responders to equip our staff with the right tools. Now, I'm not here to promote long arm, but we have bought into long arm in terms of the open source search ability that gives us without leaving a policing footprint. Now, I'm not going to stray into the really technical side of the business in terms of what we can and can't do, but we are routinely policing certain parts of the internet that I wouldn't encourage you to go and look at, where you can buy firearms, where you can buy drugs, where human trafficking takes place. We have got covert police officers routinely looking in that space using a variety of techniques, including long arm. So we are trying to stay one step ahead, but it is incredibly challenging. Now, I don't want to personalise this in my experience here now, but the way that cybercrime is going now, you will probably know somebody, either in this room or within your circle of friends or family, that has been the victim of a cybercrime. You will probably know somebody. So think about it in terms of the scale of the problem. Now, internally now, there's two sides to this. There's the virtual side and the physical side. So what do we police on the internet? What do we do in terms of a typical call for service will be an online harassment. So I don't want to personalise it, but you're on Facebook, I'm on Facebook. We were friends at one point, now we're not, and we're having a slanging match online. That's then reported as harassment. So in its simplest form, that's what's happening on a day-to-day basis. The other end of the spectrum is your cyber-dependent, your top end, where there's websites being taken down or there's a demand that comes in. And we've got everything in between. Now, what we can't do is train all of our staff to deal with all of that everything in between, which is why we're setting up a dedicated cybercrime team who will be responsible for our training plan, maintaining continuous professional development, because that's important as well. So what's the emerging trend? You've already heard a little bit of that horizon scanning that's coming down the line, where we think we're going to get challenges aimed at the service. And this isn't going away. Year on year, the demand is going that way, not the other way. So we've got to think differently. We've got to do things differently. This keeps locking on me now. That's the other thing with these tablets. We've invested a small fortune in mobile technology. These tablets are ace when they work, they're brilliant, but as soon as we've got them, they're obsolete. Technology doesn't stand still. And when you look at the amount of information that's available on these devices now, when we are reactively investigating a crime, if you will, we've got to store it somewhere. And it costs us money. So what do? You've seen in the press recently the issues around disclosure and the fact that police haven't disclosed material that's relevant to traditional crime. It leaves us vulnerable. We are creating what's called a digital media investigation unit. So if you bear with me again with the virtual into the physical world, so all the mobile phones that you've got, all the tablets that you've got, all the laptops that you've got, they need examining when they come into law enforcement. So the digital media investigation unit will be doing all of that, plus automatic number plate recognition, radio frequency propagation surveys, so we can do our own cell site work, we can do all this in-house now, and where we can't do it, we haven't got that capability or capacity, then that's when we look to the private sector to say, can you plug that gap for us? So in terms of the expertise that you've got and where you can help law enforcement, it is all that spectrum, it's that whole spectrum. Now, Cheshire Constabulary has got a cybercrime strategy that is online and it's open source and it's available. So if you're really interested, I can make that available to you. And it talks about some of the challenges, some of our 4P approach and what we're looking to do around preventing this from happening, because the other percentage that's in play here is what percentage of cybercrime can be prevented. A few whispers. Go on, put a number on it, somebody for me. 30%, 60%, put you out your misery, it's 80%. It's estimated, and there is, did you say 80? Yeah, well done. Well done. Yeah, 80% of all cybercrime, and there's some academic rigour behind this, could be prevented, and that is simply by following 3 simple messages. Strong password, It's as simple as that. We were giving out confusing messages, weren't we, changing password frequently, and use different passwords for different software, different systems. Well, you need a strong password. Keep up to date with your antivirus and everything else that comes with it, your internet security. Simply stay safe online and back up your data. When I was a child, I know I've got grey hair now, and I'm probably the wrong side of 40, but there was a big campaign about driving in cars. You might think, well, what's that got to do with cybercrime? But the message there was clunk click every trip. And I imagine there's a few people in the audience that might resonate with that. So when you're getting in a car now, it's second nature, isn't it? You get behind the wheel, you put your seatbelt on. Those are the people that drive. That's what we need people to do when they go online. You need to put the seatbelt on and stay safe. It's as simple as that. Right, I've brought you back on track. Is that all right?
That's great.
Any questions?
Where do the powers of the police stop and the National Crime Agency, the intelligence services, when you consider that the behaviour of hackers is ultimately in what would be considered intelligence officers' job a number of years ago?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not an easy one to answer within a couple of minutes, but what I will say to you is we're exploring alternative outcomes. When we face a challenge such as that, where we would have somebody who's hacked into whatever business, whatever it is the criminal justice system the right outcome for that individual? That's the first question we will ask ourselves now. So what we may say, there's a possible diversion, a possible route is that you could embark on an ethical hacking route. And what we could do is turn that to our advantage and working with the regional organised crime unit saying, okay, come and work with us. This is our website. How would you get into it? And we can start reverse engineering it then, instead of being completely punitive and saying, right, this is it. You're entering the criminal justice system and away you go. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's got to be case by case. But yeah, good question.
What if that was responsible to take you down the boring website? What would happen to that person?
Well, on that occasion, we have to look at the disruption. We make an impact assessment. I know this is a hypothetical conversation, I suppose, but if you make an admission here now, we are recorded. That individual would be arrested, they'd be interviewed, and depending on the circumstances of who that person was and what their background was, it's ultimate. They would probably get some form of sanction, probably a charge, given the disruption, probably.
Would it be custodial?
It wouldn't be custodial now. But that's when you look at the legislation, it's out of date. I'm not going to test anybody's law here on the Computer Misuse Act. But there are 4 offences. Go on then, you're going to tell me what they are?
No, I can't.
All right, okay, go on. Sorry, you had a question, sorry.
I was going to ask the dreaded Brexit question, actually, and given the global nature of cybercrime and the databases that you likely share with your European partners, I wonder if this, if it comes on your radar and if it is a concern or not.
Yeah, Brexit. Again, another easy question for me to answer in a couple of minutes. In law enforcement, what we will always have is the ability and the appetite to share information. We're still going to be part of the Schengen area, even though we're leaving, and that isn't going away. Interpol, Europol, they will still exist, and they will want information from the Five Eyes, which are the 5 intelligence states, and that isn't going away either. And the United Kingdom is one of the Five Eyes, so we'll always be sharing information. What hasn't been ironed out yet is the day-to-day checks that will happen at the border whenever you pass from one country to the next. That is automated at the moment, and it is automatic. We have got requests that come into Cheshire Police and vice versa from all over the world. Can we have information on Aaron Duggan, please? So what do we hold locally, what do we hold regionally, and what do we hold nationally? But it's quite mature, if I'm honest with you, the network is sharing information, but it hasn't been ironed out yet how that's going to work. There may have to be there probably will be some new legislation.
So when security comes up and much of the politicians' conversation, it's usually just something to ignore?
Not necessarily ignore, because UK policing, I'm speaking nationally now, not on behalf of Cheshire Police. We have what's called the National Police Chiefs Council, and there's a chief officer that's responsible for that information sharing. So they're having meetings and they're saying all the what-ifs, all the contingencies, all the planning about come Brexit Day, what does it look like? That's what's being prepared for now. Any easy ones? I need to speak to you afterwards. Any more questions? Okay, thanks for listening. Thank you.